For the first game that you're talking about, the pain one, I was doing the stage intros, and yeah, like 20 minutes beforehand, all the fans are all out of their seats, standing up, making noise, and just yelling at them before they're even on stage, before they can even see our players. And when all the 100 Thieves players came out, they were like, you could see it on their faces. They're like smiling and stuff because they're like, oh my God, like, what is happening right now? Because the entire stadium is yelling at them. But then after I did the intros, because everyone is like booing them and like actually throwing insults at them and stuff too, I was the only person cheering. I was like, woo, 100 Thieves! Like trying to give them high fives and stuff.
Hello and welcome to The Dive, driven by Kia, Season 9, Episode number 5. Kobe and I are in Brazil right now, and the North has dominated the South in Week 1. Meteos, of course, joining us back from LA, and Kobe has a sore throat, unfortunately, so he might be talking a little bit less than normal. But kicking things off, Meteos, I heard you're going to be the coach or something for Doublelift's meme team?
Yeah, that's kind of what's going on right now. So they were kind of doing guest coaches initially because, it's all kind of like that scrappy grassroots esport feel that I feel like so much of us fell in love with. So it was kind of last second, like the day before they were doing their first scrims, I got a Discord message from Lena being like, hey, you want to coach us tomorrow? And then Doublelift's like, yeah, you're doing all the draft and reviews. And I'm like, dude, I don't know how to do either of those things. But, it sounds kind of fun. I'll give it a try. Mm-hmm. And so we did a couple set of scrims. And it seemed pretty good. I mean, we had a good time. Doublelift said he liked it. He thought it could be a good fit. So, yeah, I think I'm going to do some more with them. And I don't know all what their plan is. Like, I feel like bringing in other guest coaches is good too because, you can get more perspective on things, especially when you're starting out. But, yeah, I don't know. I always have the same feeling when I'm doing any kind of, like, pro league stuff where when I haven't done it for a while, I get kind of nervous going back into it. But then when I, am back in it, it's like riding a bike. It feels so comfortable and normal, like just watching the games, being in that scrim environment. It's so, I don't know, it's so addicting. Like it's just fun to do. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
That's that competitive drive. You can't get rid of it. It hooks you in, and I expect every one of their drafts to have Vi and Lucian in it.
Vi and Lucian?
Your two favorite picks.
Oh yeah, big time. Nah, dude, being on the coaching side of things is so funny though, because on our co-stream, I always get this like, it's kind of I don't know how much of it's a meme. I think it's a meme, but like this kind of anti-coach reputation because I feel like I'm more comfortable calling out, like bad coaching than other people are. Like, for me, every time I hear buzzwords from coaches, like, you just got to be proactive or, like, play your game, don't play their game. I'm just like, you're saying nothing right now. Like, these are not actionable things you can do. You're not just sitting there and gaming like, oh, man, fork in the road. Do I want to be proactive or reactive here? Like, oh, man, I'm just reactive all the time. It's like, that's not really a real thing. So I've worked with obviously good coaches and bad coaches over the years. And so I just try to like, bring the stuff I liked with me and, try to avoid the stuff I didn't like. But yeah, it definitely being on this side of things does give me more perspective, especially when it comes to draft. Because like, I think everyone who's ever coached League probably goes through this issue where you want to draft a good team comp for your team, but you also don't want to make everyone on your team miserable. So it's like, if it's up to me, I'm drafting like Cassante, Skarner, Braum. Like, I'm doing TL drafts every game kind of thing because, you know, just having those front lines makes the game so much playable. But then every once in a while you got, like, I think we had one draft that was like Nidalee jungle Pike support. And I was just telling him going into the game, I'm like, guys, this is not a playable draft. Like, I'm trying to give you what you want to play, but, like, this is bad. Good luck. And it was, as expected, one of those games where it's like, you know, early game goes really well, but then as soon as you have to start playing the vision control game or take any fights, it's like, you know, oh, can't walk into them. You just die. So I think balancing all of that and, you know, like, trying to make sure people have a good time while still making sure the team's going in a good direction is a challenge for sure. But I mean, so far it's been fun.
Yeah. I mean, I also think the other thing that people from community side don't always consider when they're, like, roasting a coach for drafts or whatever is that sometimes the players just can't play, like, the best champion for the slot, right? It's like, oh, like, you know, Aurelia will be perfect here as, like, a hard counter to the Gnar and gives you everything you need. You need some physical damage, and it's like, well, your top laner can't play that, so you can't pick it, you know? Or, like,
it's so funny you said that because, like, the very first thing I said when I started talking to everyone was, so, like, first it was just me and Doublelift in a call, and then everyone else kind of trickled in, and I was like, yo, what do you play? And every single player said, yeah, I play everything. It was so funny because
like,
we were memeing about it.
No, you don't.
Because it's the pro player default. It's like their bar for what they can play is just like, can I physically lock in the champion and kind of know what items to build? But then eventually you realize they're like, yeah, I don't like this champion. I don't want to blind this. Like, I don't like this matchup, et cetera, et cetera. So now I feel like I have to rephrase the question. I'm just like, what are you most comfortable on, and, like, what champion do you know all the matchups for and feel like you can win them, and, like, not what can you play? So it's really funny to, like, see all this stuff from the other perspective, for sure.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how you do reviews and stuff too, because I know we've talked a lot about this, where one of your big frustrations with coaches doing reviews and, like, coaches watching scrims was that they were always watching with full vision on, and then, you know, kind of, like, making, you know, comments based on, oh, well, you shouldn't have gone there because, like, their jungler was there. And it's like, well, I didn't know that, right? So I'll be interested to see how you handle that stuff and kind of, like,
yeah, I mean, we're doing it all on stream. So it's actually been pretty interesting content, I think. And yeah, I mean, so far the reviews have been pretty good. Like, we don't even, because we don't have TR accounts, so we're just watching on live. And, you know, I don't want a 3-minute delay, so I've just been, like, watching it from usually Speaker's point of view, because, you know, I'm a jungler. And so, yeah, all these things is, like, I'm watching it and I'm just thinking real time, like, you know, what should everyone be thinking about and what are they looking for? And I think that matters so much more than, like, what actually happens, because, you know, obviously when you're setting up for a play, you don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, definitely the hindsight stuff, the, like, Omnivision stuff. I don't think I'm going to be doing any of that because that's some clown behavior for sure.
How serious do you think you guys are going to take it? Is it like, we're going for it, you know, we're giving it the all, or is it like, yeah, it's kind of for fun and who cares, it's content?
I think right now it's probably closer to the for fun side, but
yeah,
it's also really early on, and I don't know, because it's really just, you know, something we're doing for fun. It's like Doublelift's not salarying everyone. We're just literally there for fun and for content. So right now I think it's something like 2 days a week of scrims, and then I think the NACL open qualifiers is like the beginning of March. And then I think, like, the ideal goal would be doing well in NACL and then, like, winning the guest slot tournament at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And so it probably just depends how it goes, you know, how much fun everyone's having with it, how realistic the goal seems. Because I feel like if it's like, you know, the team just starts dominating everyone and it seems like the guest slot is, like, a real possibility, then people would probably ramp it up and want to, like, take it more seriously, play more. But I don't think everyone's just coming in, like, first day being like, yeah, we're going back in the LCS, baby.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, though, because you're all pro gamers, ex-pro gamers, whatever you want to call it. So it's, like, by nature, like Kobe said it's earlier, you're all super competitive, right? So you talk about, oh, if it's going really well, you might want to take it more serious. But I can also see if it's going badly, people wanting to take it more serious, right? Because it's like, there's a lot of LCS champions in here, and if you're going in and just getting absolutely slapped around in open qualifiers for NACL and stuff, then it's like that's a little bit embarrassing, right? Like it hurts the ego a bit. Like, hey guys, maybe we need to step it up. Maybe we need to do 3 days. Maybe we need to do 4 days. I just think it's always kind of funny because it's hard for people who have been at the kind of like pinnacle of competition, so to speak, to take things just like casually and easy and like not care if you lose. It's just kind of like goes against your nature that you need to have to be able to get there in the first place.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You know, like maybe first match day you lose to some randoms and you accidentally open the Reddit thread and you see some people like calling you washed or whatever, and it's just like, dude, I got to remind them what's up.
Mm.
Yeah, so maybe that's possible, but I don't know. It's all still really early, and I feel like a lot of us are just playing it by ear.
You'll have to get Doublelift to put you all on the Uber Eats salary. You know, you get free delivery while you're on Team Doublelift.
Yeah, maybe let us stay in one of his mansions or something.
I remember hearing a story about how Doublelift when he was playing one year spent like I think it was like $60K or something on food delivery because whenever he would order, he would just like order for his teammates too, and he ordered for like every meal, so he racked up like some
Wow.
insane food delivery bill.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, could be. I haven't heard that one, but I believe it.
Yeah. Well, we're down in Brazil. It's been quite a bit of fun so far. I will say the crowds have been pretty crazy. I'm never sure how much comes across on stream versus like in person, but they are legit. Like they have like chants and like songs and stuff. And I remember for the first game, I think the first game was the Pain game, and they were, I want to say, like chanting and doing the thunder sticks and doing all this sort of stuff. Probably like 20 to 30 minutes before the game even started. They're like all on their feet, like going crazy. So it's definitely been cool to see how hardcore the crowd is, and like every time one of our teams comes out, they all get hardcore booed and stuff. Like any little thing goes well for their team, they're all popping off. It's pretty fun. Yeah, I've got to say like the crowd environment and stuff is really cool, and you can see like why it's kind of really popular down here and how passionate the fans are, right? And it's like CBLOL never really did much internationally, and they've never really cared, right? And LTA South, I think, is kind of continuing that, where it's just like the fans are so hardcore in supporting their teams and their favorite players that they don't really care about anything beyond kind of like the regional play and stuff. So I think it's pretty cool just seeing how into it the fans are.
Yeah. I mean the booing thing is definitely different because I remember a few years back, maybe more than a few years back, there was that incident during Worlds in NA where I think one of the Asian teams that came out got booed in like the Chicago theater, I think it was. And there was a big Reddit thread being like, "Oh, this is like so disrespectful, etc." And I kind of thought that too. I was like, that's not cool. But then in Brazil, it's just like expected. They're like, "Yeah, you're not Brazilian. Of course, we're gonna boo you."
And the first day, they even brought they had fireworks outside the studio and stuff. And there's a guy setting up selling cakes over here. And hot dogs over here. They have street vendors, and it's like
barbecue
an actual it's like an actual party. And then for the first game that you're talking about, the Pain one, I was doing the stage intros, and 20 minutes beforehand, all the fans are all out of their seats, standing up, making noise and just yelling at them before they're even on stage, before they can even see our players. And when all the 100 Thieves players came out, they were you could see it on their faces. They're smiling and stuff because they're like, oh my God, what is happening right now? Because the entire stadium is yelling at them. But then after I did the intros, because everyone is booing them and actually throwing insults at them and stuff too, I was the only person cheering. I was like, woo, 100 Thieves! Trying to give them high fives and stuff to give them some positive as well. But it is it has been unreal, the amount of energy. Some of the fans, they never sit back down. They're standing the whole time cheering for the entire game.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so different from how it is here. That's cool though. That is really cool.
Yeah,
It must be a lot of fun to be there. Like just feel the energy.
definitely. It's been really cool, and it's funny. Like your story, Kobe, was basically the same. Like when I was doing the intros for C9, and Arrow and Reaper came over to me, and they're like, "You're our only fan here. You're gonna have to 1v9 this." So like after I did the intro, I'm like, "C9, woo, woo, woo," just like popping off and stuff. It's pretty funny. But there was actually, I will say, there were some Brazilian fans for the NA teams, which I was kind of surprised. Like for the C9 game, there was someone who had like the custom Vulcan shirt. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter or whatever. It was just like a bunch of pictures of Vulcan and stuff, and like
Wait, really?
like, yeah, and like it just says like Vulcan C9 or Vulcan or whatever, and there's just like all these pictures of Vulcan over the shirt. Like they were there. There was some C9 fan with like a big poster that was like C9 since 2013, like blah blah and all this kind of stuff. And for Liquid, when they were there, they were getting some chance. When FlyQuest was playing, I want to say I saw like probably 4 or 5 Brazilian fans that actually had FlyQuest jerseys and stuff. So it's been pretty cool. The studio itself is also really cool. They have a pretty cool setup where it's kind of like you come in and they have like a store selling the jerseys and everything like that, and they have like all these statues from Arcane. They had like the new Victor statue and Jinx and Vi and stuff. So it's a pretty cool setup for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like a lot of fun. Absolutely.
And then yesterday, our day off, we did like a tour around. Me and Azael and a bunch of the crew, Flowers and everybody. And that was super cool too, just like exploring around Brazil. Unfortunate that I got the sore throat sickness or whatever during it, but I think it was super worth. What was your favorite part, Azael?
Probably Batman Alley. It was like this place where they had all these different murals and everything that the artist did, and our tour guide was telling us how they replace them like really, really regularly too. Like some of them are there for a week, some of them are there for months. It's just like the owners of the buildings. Artists will come, either they like pay them to do it, or they just like volunteer to do it and stuff, depending on the situation. But there's like all kinds of art, and it's changing all the time. I thought that was really, really cool. It was definitely my favorite part. Yeah, I think that was my favorite part for sure.
I think I saw like you and Flowers tweeted out a cool like Arcane mural.
Yeah, it was super random too. So some guy was like spam tweeting to me like 5 or 6 times that I was sponsored. Yeah, of course you're selling out. Blah blah blah. I'm like, brother, I wish they paid me to tweet about that. But we were straight up just like walking down this place, Batman Alley. I mean, Riot probably commissioned the mural. I have no idea. Maybe it was just like a random mural that someone did, or maybe it was commissioned. I don't really know. But we were walking, we just like turned the corner and we all saw like the Arcane thing. And we were like, what the? Because we had seen some Jinx stickers and stuff around in the alley too. So people were like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then they saw the whole mural. So it's definitely cool to see the Arcane stuff there.
I like their choice of mural too, like that Echo Jinx one from episode 7.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just such a good episode.
Yeah. The song too, so good.
The French one.
Yeah. I actually really liked it.
Yeah, no, it's a good song. Just I don't know if you ever looked up the lyrics, but it's like really depressing if you see the lyrics, like the translated lyrics. No, yeah, it's like a super sad song.
Oh, okay. I like the song though.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's a banger.
What about you?
How were the games?
Oh yeah.
I watched them, but
yeah.
Like, how was it there? Pretty one-sided. I mean, obviously, it was fairly dominant from LTA North, but I mean, I don't know. Brazil put up a decent fight in a lot of them, especially early game. It seemed like it just kind of fell apart for them past like 20 minutes. I don't know. I think because it was kind of like what Audie was talking to us about last week, where he was saying he thinks that I think mechanically we're not that different from them, right? Like, I think they can hold their own in lane most of the time. They got some really good players. I think the part that's hard is the vision control and the way you play out the map,
Yeah.
because that's something that's really hard to tell when you're just watching a game from like all vision, because like you don't. It's hard to tell what information each team has, right? But a lot of the time, at least when I was watching, I feel like where it started to fall apart for the Brazilian teams would be like they would kind of set up some level of control, but they seemed to just get very, like, it was kind of like a bull seeing red. Like, they would just see a champion on the map and just all sprint at him. And then, especially in the 100 Thieves game, I thought it was like a really, really good example of it, where they just, like, they would just see someone on side lane and just drop all lanes and just legit run at the guy. And it's like, okay, even if you killed him doing this, that would not be a net positive for you. So, I think that's definitely something that that they could probably work on a bit.
I think the thing that stood out to me the most, actually, was the Cloud9 Loud lane swap. And it was like 5 minutes into the game, and I was like, this game is so over, because they tried to dive Thanatos on topside with 4 people. So Skarner only does 3 camps, and Blabber is playing Zyra versus a Skarner, and the Skarner skips 3 camps to go dive, dies. Blabber already did a full clear on Zyra, so is super far ahead. So Loud 4-person dives topside, they die doing it, and Blabber already has Zyra lead over Skarner, and Sven and Vulcan on bottom side get like 3 plates while the rest of Cloud9 is getting kills, and it was like a 2,500 gold lead by 4.5 minutes, and then they swapped back. They sent Sven was on Corki. They sent Sven and Vulcan up to top lane, and then they killed the top laner too, who's an Olaf who needs money to even be a human. And it was just like that game stood out the most to me by far of any game, because it was just like that early game error is the whole game, and you're just done.
Yeah, that was maybe one of the dirtiest lane swaps ever. Not even just of this tournament, of just the history of League of Legends. It was a mess. It was just, because that play you were talking about with the dive, like, I was actually shocked when I was watching it, because even the setup for it is like, okay, they see Zyra here. Zyra has fully cleared. She's level 4. She is just standing there. There's no surprise that she's here. It's a level 2 Cassante. You did not deny him XP. He's not even low. Like, what are you going to do, guys? And they said, we're diving him anyway. And, yeah, like, I think he buffered the Skarner E with the Cassante W. Zyra was there, and Skarner just, like, actually sprinted it. And, yeah, like you said, it ended up being, like, a massive gold lead early game. And then, like, when the wave bounced back, they killed Olaf as it crashed. And so that's one of those things where, until you've really seen a lot of lane swaps and you've practiced it and you've studied it, you can really mess it up badly. And that was kind of one of those things where in the early days of LCS, you could exploit the weaker teams by just swapping, because it was like, it doesn't really matter how our lanes go. They're just probably going to mess something up because they don't know what to do. And so in a way, it's just kind of like a knowledge check. You know, it's like on all these different timings, because there's a lot of variables. It's like, okay, where's your jungler going to start? What wave are you going to crash on? Is your top laner going to be in lane, or is he going to be with the bot lane and then TP somewhere? So there's totally a lot of things that can happen in it. And until you've like practiced it a bunch and seen all the iterations and figured out what's optimal, you can just make the wrong choice and end up like out of the game immediately.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I will say the games overall pretty much went almost exactly how I expected. Like, I do think, you know, from watching a lot of the LTA South games before, it's like they had a lot of games that were like really messy lane swap games, you know, even just against their own teams, where one team would almost be entirely out of the game, you know, off of just the lane swap because of like some really big mistakes and stuff. So that was definitely a big concern for me, for you know, their competitiveness. And you know, the one team that we pointed out as, hey, like maybe we're worried about them losing, was Liquid, right? And they were the only team that dropped a game. We can talk about the liquid series a bit because I think that's the one that was kind of like probably the most interesting and probably stands out the most for people because it was a lot closer. It was a 2-1. Like I feel a little bit bad talking about it and like harping on UmTi, but it just feels like I don't know, man. Like he is having such a rough split, and I know he had the interview coming out. It's like okay, you can't judge me. It's just like it's just the best of 3 or 2. But then you look at a series like that after he's already been struggling a bit in NA, and he comes down here, and it's like multiple Barons stolen against him. He's getting picked into them getting Baron and Soul into respawning and immediately getting picked again into losing the game, and it's just like it's rough. Like I'm not trying to say that it's all him or it's only him, but I felt like APA, overall was playing better in those series. Like he had a really good Talia game and stuff. But yeah, MT just feels like he's really, really struggling. And I will say, to me, Impact on carries is still just not it. Like, Impact's a great player, but Impact on Jax, I just don't like it. Every time I see it, it doesn't look good. And he just seems to always fall behind in gold. Seems like he always is just kind of like overgrouping and playing like he's playing a tank. And so I'm definitely worried for TL off the back of that. I do think it was it was nice to see that Estral was able to take a game, and I think that was like an exciting moment definitely for LTA South, and showed that hey, at least like we have someone that can compete. And I think Jose's got to be pretty happy with how the series went for him because he had those big moments and stuff. But yeah, I mean it's tough for TL.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially that point on TL with that Jax into Gangplank game, because I was thinking pretty much the same thing watching it, where that game was actual torture for Birdall. It was like 15 straight minutes of watching a Gangplank get dove over and over and over. And he was pretty much by all metrics just like gone. He was a minion. And usually in a situation like that, like you should be able to snowball on that. Like Gangplank is not a tanky champion at all. He's very vulnerable, doesn't really have mobility. But like you were saying, I don't know how much of it is, Impact or the team, because with all these things, like even UmTi's performance to an extent, I think, I don't think he's a bad player or whatever. Like he gets high ranked in solo queue. He obviously knows how to play the game. But sometimes I think like if your team is struggling, especially in a spot like Liquids, where you're going from being this like number one dominant team in the whole region, everything you're doing is working, everyone sees you on your own level, and now they're kind of struggling. Not in the sense that they're like bottom of the standings, but I don't think many people are ranking them first anymore. And obviously, it can be hard to figure out what's going on because you go from just winning everything to not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, sometimes maybe with UmTi, it's like there's conflicting ideas. It's like, what do I want to do versus what do I think my team wants me to do? So I could definitely see that being a struggle. And then also with Impact situation, it's like, I'm not sure how much of it is like his decision versus his team's decision. Because like you said, he did overgroup a lot. They didn't really punish the Gangplank. It felt like Gangplank actually had like a really comfortable game, even after dying, I don't know, what was like 6 times or something early? Like
even more, I think. He
was just like actually sprinting it. Like it felt like the dude gave up. Like he was just actually checked out. I think he might have muted all at some point during that one. Sold all of his items for a few tiers or something, but yeah, it was really, really surprising, and definitely probably a weakness in TL's play if you're not able to play through side lanes like that, because it is one of the harder things to do in League, honestly. Like,
yeah,
just be comfortable, because the fundamentals of League is like you want to have these like tanky comps, you push down mid, you get wards in their jungle, and you just fight them when they walk in, right? But sometimes if you're playing split push, you just don't do that. You just let them do it, and then there is risk. It's like, okay, we don't exactly know where they are. They could show up in side lane, they could show up mid, they could show up in the jungle, but you just have to be like really aware of what they're trying to do and then how to play around it, and it's hard. It's really hard to do that, and yeah, it's just something teams need to practice. But I think that's to me, that's always been one of the things that the Eastern regions are way better at, is like their ability to play through side lanes is insane. And then when you do that, like your soul laners get naturally so much more ahead because they're just always on the waves, farming a lot, and you're pressuring turrets. And a team who can play that style well is extremely hard to play against.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that it's like, even independent from this little time of struggle, it's always been my kind of criticism of Impact on these carries, is like, not that he can't mechanically press the buttons or whatever. It's just that it just seems like his tendencies don't suit it, right? Like, and Jax is a perfect example. I mean, this was a 42-minute game where it was like 6.7 CS per minute or something like that. And I just think that you have to be greedy, right? Like, if you're going to play Jax, you need to be farmed, you need to be winning in that side lane, and you need to be playing for yourself a lot of the time, right? And I liked his Shen a lot more, even though like people were memeing, and fair enough, like his first ult was like 20 minutes into the game or something like that on Shen. But they weren't really making a lot of proactive plays, and the couple times he maybe could have used it defensively, it felt like it was already kind of doomed. So sometimes those games just happen. But it's like that allowed him to play, a style that he's super comfortable in, play heavily through side lanes, and still be able to like answer the plays with ult and join the team, like always have a global up. So to me, it's like, I don't think there's anything wrong with finding other champions that like fit your style, like within that kind of pool. But it is kind of that weird thing where it's like, I feel like it becomes difficult for coaches sometimes. Like you were talking about earlier, Meteos, where it's like, oh, what champions are you comfortable on? I can play everything. You know what I mean? It's like
I can do it all.
Exactly.
I got a champion ocean.
Exactly, and I think Impact definitely probably sees it that way, and maybe he can, right? Like maybe he can pilot them that well, but I just think it's like clear that he's exceptional on tanks and in that style. So he does have his carries that I think he's done really well on in the past. To me, he was always a really good GP player, which like kind of allowed him to play in the side. And I think maybe it's just because he had GP ulti to like help out the team, they didn't feel the need to like group as much. He felt more comfortable just like surviving in the side and then like ulting to the team. But he's definitely had his like carry picks and stuff like that he's done really well on. But the ones that feel like, oh, you need to straight up split push and stuff, I've never felt like his bread and butter. Like I've never thought, oh, like I really want that Impact Jax or that Impact Camille or that Impact Fiora, those ones that like really have to be able to play super greedy, constantly pushing side lanes, and get advantages there.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Definitely not something, because I think it does come down to his tendencies as a player. Like he always wants to do what's best for the team. Yeah, and especially when it's like self-sacrificing. So it is hard to shift gears and be like, okay, guys, like, we got to play for me now. So yeah, I mean, maybe it's something they're working on. Not sure.
Yeah,
I will say a couple of things. Number one is that Spawn is flying here. It actually just landed already. He tweeted out as that game ended, like that he was getting on the plane. So that means that they had already set it up, and they're like, if we win and we're still in the tournament, you need to fly over here now to come help us solve some of our issues. Because TL obviously is a team that wants to be number one and feels like they, deserve to be back where they were, like you're talking about last year. And so hopefully that will be a big help for him to be here with, in person and have a physical presence and, helping them out with a lot of these issues. Because, like you're saying, there were mistakes from multiple members. It wasn't just UmTi. Impact, APA, even Core JJ had some, even though the bottom lane was generally amazing. But it is like when you're looking at it, there are those issues, and you're like, we could improve on these, but then the game losing big UmTi ones are just like you're saying, it's even painful to talk about because everyone looks at Baron steals and like that's obviously huge ones. But equally as bad, if you're getting picked off 35 minutes into the game out over by Baron, like that was game losing right there. And then he revives and like runs down there by himself, and they pick him off again. And then
I mean that Poppy game was a pretty dirty ending. Like that was hard to defend. It's like I'm trying to not just pile on UmTi because I think it's kind of obvious he's struggling a bit. But I just think that usually if a player isn't looking that good, it's not always just like him, right? Like it's not, I don't think it's just like UmTi sucks, but it could just be stuff going on within the team that can affect certain people's play.
But I feel like he's probably it's got to be at this point like somewhat of a mental thing too, right? Because it feels
It could
like he has so many big moments that you can point to that are these game-losing moments, right? You know, across last year too, and this year. So I think it's to me, it's like when those things happen, then you start worrying about them, and you're like, oh God, you know, and you start kind of like it's in the back of your mind. And, oh God, what if they steal again? Like, oh God, what if, you know, what if I get caught here, right? It changes the way you play. And I think that can be a really, really detrimental thing. And that's why, you know, it's such a mental game, right? And it can be very, very difficult. Like, even if you have the mechanics, even if you have the skill, it's like if you're not having that same level of confidence, or you're kind of like thinking about other things during the game, it can really be a huge detriment to you.
Yeah, and it's not the same mistake over and over. There's Baron steals, getting picked off, Skarner driving Nico into your team. This is a team fight basically, and then like do you remember the Xin Zhao one? Because that was pure mechanic. Like when he's Xin Zhao,
the flash ult on his ear, that was
yeah.
I mean, you're not wrong. Like, I'm not trying to sit here and just defend UmTi blindly. He's been kind of like underperforming for sure.
Yeah.
I just
I
don't want to
move on.
Put it all on him.
Yeah. No, it's definitely not all on him. The FlyQuest series, I think, you know, again, it's funny because FlyQuest did drop down. You know, before they even lost their series to Cloud9, I know that week on the dive, I was talking about how I thought they were like a tier of their own in the league, and it still feels like talking to people, everyone still just feels that way. You know, it's almost like how everyone was talking about TL when they went to Worlds, where it was like TL lost to FlyQuest, and everyone's like, yeah, but they're the real first seed though, you know. And it wasn't until FlyQuest did better at Worlds that then everyone kind of really started changing their tune. And I think, you know, even, you know, not just me, but even like a lot of the players and the South teams and stuff, like everyone I've talked to was still kind of looking at FlyQuest as like, yeah, but FlyQuest is going to win, right? Like FlyQuest is still going to win the whole thing. And I will say they looked really, really disciplined overall. Like their games were never close at any point. Like it never felt like for a second that they were, you know, in danger of losing those games. Even with the Pike and like maybe some more kind of like for fun stuff. They just seemed like they were playing a really, really disciplined game. Bwipo had his monster Volibear game where he was like actually just that 1v4 play in top lane by the inhibitor tower where he's like behind the tier 2 and he actually 1v4s and heals up and kills someone and gets out. And it was just like, oh my God, you are actually stomping them so hard.
That was an insane game. And I heard people talking about it before the game too. Apparently, that's like Los Ratones pick. They're saying that like Volibear is just this insane like 90-10 matchup against Zambessa where it's completely unplayable. I mean, I haven't seen it enough, but I mean that game was. I don't know if that's how it always goes, but that game was actually crazy. How far ahead Bwipo got in that matchup.
I mean, I don't think any matchup's supposed to go like that. If it's
true.
Even. You know, it's like
yeah. Because usually, if it's a bad matchup, you just like lose prio and can still farm. Yeah. I feel like FlyQuest definitely was like real dominant. I was a little surprised by Masu in that series. He was definitely playing below his level to some extent. Like he was just kind of dying randomly. FlyQuest was winning the game, and it felt like I don't know if he was just bored or something, but like. It just felt like sometimes the camera would just pan to him and he would just like be getting killed in some really random way. So I don't know if they were targeting him or what, but it was kind of funny to see.
Yeah, the Jin game, it felt like they were kind of gunning for him because it kind of felt like he was the only person they could kill maybe. But no, I agree. And you could see it on his face in some of his reactions after he died. He looked pretty frustrated. But I was like, honestly, with how one-sided their games were, I kind of thought that they would be playing like a little bit more like for fun, a little bit more loose, but it would feel like even in situations where they could go for more or maybe even end the game or whatever, they just like reset Dragon, Baron, you know, like they're just always playing super objective focused and very disciplined. But I thought they looked really good. Inspired, as always, looked really good. I don't think he actually died a single time in that series. Let me double check. But to my
Wait,
recollection,
not
he
even the
didn't die.
Vi game?
Pardon?
He didn't die when he
play
played Vi?
He didn't play Vi. He played. He was 7-0-10 on Lilia, and then his other game was Sejuani. He was 0-0-19.
I'm thinking of a different inspired Vi game.
You're thinking
Okay.
of the week before. You're thinking of the week before in when it was still in the north. But like that's a pretty
Okay.
insane scoreline. He's 7-0-29.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty
That's
good.
pretty good.
He was definitely smurfing. What did you think about Cloud9 and how they played?
Seemed good. I mean, yeah, I don't know. There was that one game, obviously, where they just got like so ahead so fast. So, that game, like, it was one-sided. I thought it could have been maybe a little bit cleaner from them because even though they had like the 2K gold advantage at 4 minutes or whatnot, it still felt like it wasn't completely in their hands. Like,
They died
I don't
at
know
Herald,
how much
right?
of it was.
I think they went
Huh?
to Herald, and 2 or 3 of them died at Herald, and then that made it a lot slower, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that like Loki's way was
Or
struggling
Grubs,
a
not
bit.
Herald.
Like, yeah, there was the grub fight where they got hard engaged on, and then I think like Loki got killed in side lane by Olaf at least once. So I don't know. They were playing way Zyro, which I haven't seen that combo before, and it seems like a little weird. I don't know. I mean, you have good range and whatnot, but I still don't know what I think about Hui as a champion. He's like, as far as mages go, he seems a lot less consistent to me than everything else. Like, he can do a lot, but I don't know. To me, I almost want to put him in like the Vel'Koz category, where it's like, if people don't know what he does, then he kind of can go crazy. I think like if you're a super good Wei player, it's probably good, but I don't know. I think if you're just permanently thinking about him and like what he's trying to do, you can dodge pretty much everything he does. So I don't know. I don't love the champion, but I could be wrong on that.
I like something that you mentioned though with the Grubs fight, because even though Cloud9 2-0'd and like dominated, there were some moments that made me worry a little bit, and it was the setup in some of those like Grub fights, and then in the second game in some of the Dragon fights where like Cloud9 had this mega early lead, and it almost felt like they like got lazy with it or something. They were like, oh, we're so far ahead. They had Sven, who was like 1,000 gold ahead on top lane, but he didn't push the minion wave before they start the Grubs, and so then they start Grubs as 3, and Loud did a really good job of engaging on them. But in that scenario with Cloud9 with the early lead they had, like they shouldn't allow that setup to happen. And it seemed like if they had just if they communicated and had him push and then come down, and like they took the extra couple of seconds to coordinate on all their objective setups, then this series would have, in my opinion, looked very similar to like the FlyQuest one. Mm-hmm. But I guess that's the difference between Cloud9 and FlyQuest. Is like FlyQuest, they'll seemingly always take those extra couple of seconds of coordination, and that's why it's like so much more controlled, and the setup will look so much better. Cloud9 still blast, but then there were some of those fights where you're like, oh, if you do that versus 100 Thieves or FlyQuest, then they will punish you, because like those are the teams that will also go for those like comeback big fights.
Yeah, and I think game 1, like it was kind of the Sven show. That was a lot of fun to see, especially as a C9 and Sven fan, because like he was just so ahead. He had that 1v1 with Root, however you want to say it, where he just kind of like valked on him, and then Ezreal didn't use summoners at all and just died. And then also another example of the kind of macro play I was talking about earlier, where the Brazilian teams like to just run at you on the side lane. There was that one bot lane where Thanatos TP'd out while Loud was trying to engage on him, and then the rest of C9 was kind of still in the lane. And so Loud just like sprinted at them. I think they like whiffed Leona all, whiffed Flash Eon Sven, and then they sort of just got it turned around on them and all died. And so, yeah, obviously good play by Sven, but I think it also like it was just a really weird play by Loud. Like I don't think you normally see plays like that when you watch like the top Eastern teams play. Like just doing some super deep chase on the side lane that doesn't work, and then you turn around and all die. Like that's usually kind of like a self-inflicted error. So like an unforced error or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I mean, happens, but happy to see C9 win for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we had Vulcan and Sven on pro, so I don't know if you watched it, but they were. I was asking them about the series and stuff, and they were kind of like, yeah, we won, but we weren't that happy with how we played. We kind of trolled here, and we kind of trolled there, and they were pointing out some things that they were kind of disappointed in how they played. But it's going to be interesting, like because it is single limb, right? So I still think anything really can happen, and as much as I think there's kind of like obvious favorites in both of the series, I do think it really could potentially go either way, right? Like TLC9, I think almost everyone's going to be looking at C9 favored. I think when you're looking at the other side, Fly 100 Thieves, pretty much everyone's going to be looking at FlyQuest favored. But even talking to some of the players, they were saying it's like, hey, it's not going to be that surprising to see like a 100 Thieves upset over FlyQuest because they have some really strong ways in. And maybe we can just talk about that series first. We didn't really talk that much about 100 Thieves, in their earlier games. But I've been really impressed with how Ayla is playing. Like I think Ayla's just been straight up a lot better than last year throughout this split. Like he has been doing way better, and I don't know if it's like a confidence thing or a stage thing or if he just like actually got better. But he's playing really, really well. Partially it could just be that he's playing with FBI and they work really well together. But like even just individually, mechanically, he seems to be looking a lot better. And that to me has given such like a new dynamic to 100 Thieves where it doesn't feel like it just has to be, please God, River and Quid carry us, right? Like, and if that doesn't happen, then okay, well, probably GG. Because I actually think it's funny because 100 Thieves look so much better this year, but I actually think Sniper's played probably a lot worse than last year. Like Sniper has had a lot of, I think, kind of rough games or so-so games, but like FBI will be doing really well. Quid will be doing really well, so it hasn't necessarily mattered. And I do think, as like FBI plays with the team more and more, he's looking more and more comfortable. And I don't know, I've just been really impressed with how the 100 Thieves bot lane is playing, and I feel like it has made them a much better team. I do think that the changes in the season are really good for them as well, because it's a team that just like wants to fight 24/7. We had a stat, I don't know if you saw it, Meteos, where they have the most kills and deaths in their games of any team in the world from any league. So they have like the bloodiest. They have the bloodiest games. They love team fighting, and like that's kind of what this season is. It's just like go to objective, fight for it. Go to the next objective, fight for it. Go to the next objective, fight for it. And the C9 guys like Sven and Vulcan and Impact were kind of giving some credit to them in like the fact that they are really good team fighters. And hey, if they play well, like that could give them a real shot to actually take down FlyQuest. Even though I think everyone's looking still at FlyQuest as big favorites.
Yeah, it's funny we're talking about like 100 Thieves, the first seed team, having to upset FlyQuest still because I do think it just goes to show how like the seeding after whatever it was 3 games or whatever. Yeah, it's kind of like not the most legit in a way because it's just so few games, and even in every split you have teams that could start off really good or really bad, and then once you've played every other team or whatnot, your standing looks a lot different. But no, I pretty much agree with everything you said on 100 Thieves. I think your point on Sniper was really fair too, where it seems like it's kind of just like the growth trajectory for players, especially top laners, where I think he came into the league kind of like, nothing to lose, just going to try to out-hands people. And he got a ton of solo kills and whatnot, but obviously he was still like very raw as a player, where he did have a lot of games where he could kind of like win his lane hard and then carry the game. But at the same time, games where he didn't win his lane, he kind of like could solo lose you the game as well. So I think he's just trying to have like a much more measured play style, which, he's trying to not lose his team the game. And then sometimes when you're playing like that way, you might lose out on some of your strengths of like being able to like be really lane dominant or whatnot. But I think it's just something like you have to find a balance for. I think the way he's talking about his interviews, I think he's trying to sound humble, but it's like he's kind of like, what's the word? Like, he's saying like, yeah, I don't do anything. My team just carries me. And I'm like, I don't know if you want to say that. Like, you can give credit to your team without saying like, yeah, I'm dead weight. They could replace me with anyone and they would still win. Like that kind of thing. So I think the whole team is playing really well. I think to me, Ayla's always been a good player on this team. Like, I've never really watched a lot of Ayla games where I'm just like, damn, this guy sucks. He's more a player where I'm just like, wow, like that was a good mind game he played. Like he was in a really smart place at a good time. So yeah, I mean, I like watching 100 Thieves games. I love that they're bloody. I love that they're just down to fight all the time because it's just fun, That's what viewers want. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I think especially FBI's Kaisa game too. I think FBI deserves a lot of credit. Like when he goes in for the like 1v1 with Chidan, that was super high play. And this is a guy that throughout his time in NA, everyone's always like, really nice to have FBI on your team because he's standard and like comfortable later and he'll scale and stuff. But like he's making very aggressive plays for this team too. And so I think not only does he bring a lot of the shot calling like his teammates are always talking about, but I think he deserves a lot of credit for his his actual play the last few weeks as well. To me though, this matchup, the funnest part for 100 Thieves versus FlyQuest, I feel like these two teams' styles are almost diametrically opposed. They're like complete opposites. 100 Thieves are so frequently looking for fights, and then also I think they're usually at their best with like 1-3-1 comps and having Quid on some really good split push champion, whether it be like the melee carries or Aurora or something like this, and being able to get pressure and then send a whole bunch of people into a skirmish and into a fight and collapse on people. And then FlyQuest is like almost always building for 5-on-5s. They have started to put more range in their comps, but they used to be a little bit less range, but like two super good carries for Quad and Masu, and then like really structured team fights, whether they have an Ivor and Enchanter or just like a really beefy front line. And so that's like this of the LCS or LTA North matchups. This one is actually one of my favorites, and like we haven't gotten to see it this year so far, and so I'm super duper looking forward to this one because I always love when teams have really different styles and then you get to see them match up, because there will be overreactions either way if they're able to pull it off or not. So super looking forward to the draft, especially in this one. I hope, because 100 Thieves in the past have had a lot of success with a lot of comps that have globals in them and have split push potential. So I'm hoping that we get to see some of that stuff where you try and get some 1v1s, try and get pull the map apart, and put a stop to all the FlyQuest momentum that everyone's rolling with.
Yeah, I think if I was a betting man, I would still probably put my money on FlyQuest for this one, just because they do look so solid. Mm-hmm. And I think to me, stylistically, they would do well in 100 Thieves, where I feel like 100 Thieves wants to like kind of drag you into a really chaotic game. And I just don't think that's how FlyQuest usually wants to play. Like Inspired.
Unless Bwipo gets involved.
Yeah, I mean, Bwipo could for sure be down for that. But to me, Inspired's just the kind of guy who's going to be like, okay, what are these guys doing? They're just like 5-man group for no reason. Like, let's just like let them int or whatever. Mm-hmm. Rather than like, yo, we got to take this fight for fun or whatever. So I would still bet on FlyQuest personally, but it's not like a super one-sided match. I think it could for sure go either way.
Yeah. It was interesting on pros when I was asking Ben and Vulcan kind of about who they thought was the best bot lane in the league, because obviously there's been a lot of hype around Core and Yon and how well they're playing. But they still had Masu and Busio as best in the league, and they were kind of saying that to them it was like basically there was just kind of like differences in the strengths. Like Core and Yon, to them it was about how they could push leads in really aggressive lanes. Playing like Draven and Kalista, and really how they could play around like the forward bushes and zone you off XP and like do these things to play really, really aggressive. And for Busio and Masu, they were just saying how they're just so consistent, and Busio is really, really good with his roaming. And when he roams, the obvious thing is like, okay, if you can't match, then you punish the AD. But they were just saying how they felt like Masu is so hard to ever punish. Like he's just never in the wrong spot kind of thing. And so they still, it sounded like to me, had FlyQuest bot lane as the best in the league. So I think bot lane matchup is going to be really interesting because, Ayla and FBI are playing really well. Mid jungle, I think, speaks for itself. We got the Quid versus Quad matchup. We got, Inspire versus River. Like, that's super exciting. And I will say, I think based on how Sniper's playing, I definitely favor Bwipo pretty heavily. I favor, FlyQuest and top lane pretty heavily. I think FlyQuest are the more solid team, but I don't know. I mean, it's fun to go into this and not feel like, oh, it's a guaranteed FlyQuest win. And last year I would have, right? I just didn't think that 100 Thieves was like solid enough to be able to realistically take a series where they're getting prepped for by a team like FlyQuest. And so I think it speaks a lot to how much the team has improved from last year. And I think that's kind of like what I want from the league is when you can't tell who's going to win, it just makes the matches way more fun, way more exciting, right? When there's like more teams that can legitimately compete.
Makes you wish
absolutely
this was
big test for FlyQuest or 100 Thieves rather. Like they want to be in this conversation for being a top team, and even though the first seeds, like no one's really given them their respect yet. So I think taking on FlyQuest, that might change people's minds.
Yep, it is time now to talk about the next semifinal, which is going to be the TL C9 one. This one should be pretty exciting. Like I said, I think most people are going to be favoring C9 for sure. C9 seems to have started off the year really well. They had their big boot camp. TL is having their struggles, but I don't feel like it's so one-sided that you can just write off TL, especially if they can fix some of their issues.
Yeah, I think on paper this one looks real hard for TL just because of, I think the strengths for C9, sorry, they match up really well against the weaknesses of TL right now, where like Thanatos' laning and just all around top laning has been so unreal this split. So I could see that being tough for TL to handle because while I do think Impact is very good at playing the kind of like weak side stuff and maybe they can, mitigate it with lane swaps or whatnot, I think that if Thanatos like can get a good matchup and get ahead, that could be really hard for them to deal with. Also, with UmTi not having his best split, I think Blabber's a player who can absolutely punish a jungler who's not playing well. So I would be a little worried if I was TL going into this one.
I would be a lot worried, especially with them like kind of hitting the emergency button, breaking the glass, fly spawn over here who, this year is like supposed to have it in his contract where he can spend more time with his kids in Australia. They're like, it's all hands on deck emergency situation. So you know that this week of practice for TL has got to be intense, especially for the players that have been underperforming, which is most of them besides like Jan, I guess, and Core maybe. So I just 100% agree with what Meteos is saying. Top and jungle especially just feel like Cloud9 has such big strengths there mechanically that can put pressure on some of the weak areas for TL. TL is, of course, going to want to play through bottom lane. I would say UmTi should start top side and clear bottom every single game. Like, never even deviate from that. Always try and play to Core and Yon, if it's not a lane swap, of course. But so that they can then, like, win bot lane, get Core roaming around, that type of thing. But Cloud9, I feel like Blabber will just match UmTi and go fight UmTi. And Blabber's mechanics are way better than UmTi's mechanics, so match dependent as far as champions that they actually pick, but I feel like Blabber can for sure press UmTi with like the types of mistakes that it seems like he's making more now. And Azael, you were talking about kind of maybe he's even getting in his own head, and maybe that makes him make more different types of mistakes. Like Blabber is definitely a jungler that will press you. I mean, Meteos talked about playing, and watching him and playing, versus him too, and what type of pressure he can put on you. So, yeah,
I will say it's funny though because even with that, like I agree, jungle's a big issue. Top lane, I don't have that much faith in impact in some of the carries, but also like if he's playing Rumble, I'm happy to see him play Rumble. Champions like that are more lane well early and then just like group and team fight and stuff. That you're not more side laning on, even though that is a carry style champion. I think he plays those well. So I still think he has his champions that can fit well with. It was interesting to me because on pros, at one point I was referencing, the TL style of kind of playing, three frontline like tanks and stuff, and then 2 hyper carries. And Impact's like, we didn't do that. Like, I don't play that. I was like, oh, you didn't? And so
that was a different TL.
Pardon?
I said that was a different TL, not us.
Yeah. So then, I looked up his champions played after because I was like, am I crazy? Like, did I misremember this? His most played 33 games of Cassante.
No, Cassante's an assassin bruiser.
Yeah,
he's not a tank.
And it's kind of what he was saying. He's like, Cassante doesn't really count because they can do all this stuff. And it's like, okay, yeah, but, it's still like that's kind of the style that they do. And as much as like I agree, Thanatos' laning is just way better. And, who would I rather have on a carry? Obviously Thanatos. If you slap Impact on a tank and you just lane swap, like I'm pretty happy with Impact, right? Like he showed that he could do the Shen worked pretty well. If he's playing like Cassante and Shen and these style of champions, like if his 3 games are like Cassante, Shen Rumble or whatever, like variants of that, I'm pretty happy with that, and I think that he can perform really really well. I think TL's bot lane is really solid, and yeah, APA's had some oopsie moments, but I also think APA had some really good moments, and I do feel like more of his mistakes were in the North versus North teams than they were here in Brazil. And you can obviously say, well, like, it's easier opponent, so it's easier for him to look good or whatever. But I felt like APA overall was playing pretty well. So, the jungle, I have no like real argument because I do think that UmTi is just kind of really struggling. And I do favor Cloud9 at the end of the day. But I do think it's easy to sometimes like fall in the rabbit hole. And I find myself doing it as well, where it's like, okay, they're struggling. They just have no chance, But it's like not like it was that long ago where they were really doing well. So I feel like there's a shot that they could get back to it if they play their style, if they play stuff that they're really comfortable on. I don't think it's some far-fetched thing that they could beat or at least really compete with Cloud9.
As far as the Impact champion pool though, I do kind of agree with him where like everybody plays Cassante in pro, but he's played a lot of Mbessa, Rumble, Renekton, Jax, like bruisers and like.
Well, we were talking about last year, but yeah.
Yeah, I do think that like you're saying, like they do have some options. It's just that their team fighting hasn't been as good as it was last year either. So if we're looking at the like weaknesses of Cloud9 that we saw here in Brazil, like even in the Loud games where they won and ended up demolishing, and we're thinking about, can TL force those fights on them like at objectives and like be more decisive and accurate in their engages like at Grubs or at Dragons or something. I guess that's what you kind of want to bet your money on, because if they can like make room for Yawn and APA, then like they definitely could beat Cloud9 that way. But to me, I think the other series is a bit closer, and this one, with just the way things have been going, I feel a bit stronger, or like a little bit more lopsided towards Cloud9's chances.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would ask you, like, as far as the champion pool argument, right? Because it's like, yeah, Impact can play those champions, and he does play them, but top 5 most picked champions in pro right now are Cassante, Mbessa, Jace, Rumble, and Jax. And so it's like, if you're betting your house on Team Liquid winning and they lock in Mbessa, are you happy?
I mean,
I don't think that's one of their better champs.
His
On the
Mbessa-
locking in Jax, are you happy?
His Ambessa game versus 100 Thieves was a
Awful.
little rough. Yeah.
Really off. Like, are you happy with him locking in Jax? Like, let's be honest. No, you're not. You're not happy with Mbessa. You're not happy with Jax. I don't think you're even happy with Jace. I think you're happy with Rumble, and I think you're happy with Cassante, right? And so, I'm not saying he can't pilot the champions, but it's like if you're talking about him, like if you're talking about him versus Thanatos, or like him versus Bwipo or whatever, like who would you, and you're fighting at that level, you have to have him on his best, and his best is, to me, 2 out of the 5 top champions. And so when you're playing Fearless and when someone is limited in that way, it's not as though these other people can't play Cassante or can't play Rumble. So you pick them away 1 or 2 games, you ban 1 or 2 things, and all of a sudden you're pushing someone down into stuff where, you're out of that kind of priority. And I think that is the concern for me about Impact right now, just with where the meta is and just with Fearless, because the meta, like you're saying, is a lot of Ambessa and Jax and Jace. Like, these are the common picks right now. Even champions like Aurora are pretty popular top lane and things like that. Obviously a bit more niche, but still, like I'd be way more comfortable, going down the tier list and looking at him like, okay, if he's playing like a Renekton or like, like a Gragas, maybe even like an Ornn, or like these types of picks and stuff, I'd be way more happy seeing him play. Like, I would way rather Impact. I don't feel like he ever plays Poppy. I don't know if I'm crazy, but I can't really remember him playing Poppy pretty much at all. But like, why don't we see more Impact Poppy? Like that's a solid answer into Ambessa and some of these champions and into Jax and stuff, right? And I feel like fits his style so well. So that's always been something that I've wanted more from him. Is just like, there's a lot of good tanks in the game. There's a lot of champions that fit your style, and you are incredible at your style. You're absolute world class at your style. So just like step away from some of the things that you're not as good at and just dominate on what you're great at.
That's true. I mean, speaking on champions, he could go the Bwipo route, pull out a Volibear. It's really good against these like Ambessa carry champs.
Polly, Poppy, Shen, like these champions aren't.
Yeah, I mean, even
much,
Sion. We've seen some Sion. I think that's a totally playable champion. I think there are champs that can fit the style. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I do think it can make drafts a little hard when it's like, okay, we're just like not able to play the OP champs, so we're just gonna have to give him every single game, and sometimes like it'll bait you, and it can make it weird that, like, if the other team knows you're not gonna pick it, then your trades become scuffed too, because then it's like they can leave it open and not even have to take it early, and then know they can get it later. So I can see why teams will want to pick those champs, even if it's not necessarily like their players or their team's best. But no, I agree with you. I think that TL would be better off probably playing more of that, like, style that has worked so well for them. But I can see why they, would want to follow the meta as well.
I mean, I can too, right? Like, at the end of the day, as you're saying, there is a drawback to not doing that, but there's also a drawback to picking a champion and not being good at it, right? And it's like, it's weighing, which is the least damaging to your team, or which is giving you the highest percentage chance to win. And that's all you can do. Because it's like, of course, in the ideal world, every person on your team plays every champion at the elite level. And if you have that, you're probably winning worlds, right? Because you can just play everything, and you're just like the best team in the world then. But that's not reality for most people. So it's about like finding the best ways to enable your team and your players. And that's where I feel like sometimes I think, it's up to the coach to then be like, just picking something else, or to convince the player that, the team is better served by them playing this other thing. Cool. All right.
Yep.
Well, anything more on this one?
No, I think it seems like we're all kind of in agreement on this one. C9 favored, but TL's not totally out. I would say C9's more favored over TL than I would give FlyQuest over 100 Thieves, personally. I don't know how you guys feel about that one. For this one, I would put it like 2-1 for C9.
Okay.
or like 65-35.
And then what do you have the other one at?
I would have that's closer to like a 60-40 FlyQuest
Okay.
one.
It's like pretty similar, but like slightly more
Similar,
favored
yeah.
for
I mean, I don't think
Cloud9.
either of them are going to be like a total blowout stomp or anything like that.
Yeah. Are you still on Cloud9 as number one team? Like, is that who you predict then for the finals?
Of course.
Assuming everything goes that way. Yeah.
Of course.
The grin. What about you, Kobe?
What about me? Do I also think Cloud9's the number one team? No.
No. Who do you think's gonna win?
Yeah, I said at the beginning. Yeah, I definitely think Cloud9 is favored in this one, and I also said that I think it's more lopsided than the previous
For the whole event, though,
than the
who you think's
previous
gonna win
one.
the finals?
I mean, if I put money on it, I would put my money on FlyQuest, but
Yeah.
I could definitely see 100 Thieves winning. I mean, honestly, every team except for TL, I think has a decent shot. I'm just, unfortunately, I'm pretty low on Team Liquid at the moment.
Cool. Well, I definitely agree. I'm on the FlyQuest train, but it's going to be exciting. I feel like I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked if you told me you're from the future and 100 Thieves, Cloud9, or FlyQuest won. So I think it's going to be a fun.
What about TL?
You
I
wouldn't
would
be
be
shocked
surprised.
if you met someone from the future? I would be
Nope.
really shocked if someone was from
No.
the future.
Fair. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of The Dive. It's going to be a fun weekend coming up. Remember, this is The Dive driven by Kia, excuse me. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of The Dive. You can also check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The Americas stage of the LTA Split 1 playoffs continues this Saturday, 11 a.m. Pacific. It is going to be 100 Thieves versus FlyQuest. That will, of course, then be followed by Cloud9 versus TL. And then Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific, we're going to have a best of 5 finals between the winners. Thanks for watching, and we will see you soon.